Phew. Okay. Hopefully, last time we'll be in the closet Harry Potter style, but let's get back into it. Sorry for the late episode, slight bit of technical difficulties, but let's get into it. A lot of big news out of Super Rugby and the MLR. Let's go.
I need all the wins, yeah. Ain't no L's, I gotta get a no call and quits, yeah. Gotta keep on moving no matter how hard.
Here comes Danny Tucci-Zala, back to Baker, Baker with the fin. Kurt Baker in for DC, and this may well do it old glory with the try. The New Zealand Sevens legend, Kurt Baker with the cherry on top.
Can you believe it?
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the On the Line Rugby podcast, a show brought to you by the Believe Sports Network. I'm your host, Micah Nagaishi, and welcome back. Matt, and I think another episode of Super Rugby Special is on. I'm really excited about this year's content, given what we saw on the field. I really think that it's coming alive this season, as JK so eloquently put it. I may not like you as a commentator, but as a meme guy and a guy that cuts promos, I got to give you props where props is due. That is honestly what's going on. Super Rugby has come alive this year. The bottom has flipped over onto the top. There is more parity than ever before. I said it last week. I'll say it again. And to top it off, the incumbents have fallen. And I think there's no better place to start off with it than the Chiefs and the Reds. I really think that Josh Fluke and the Crimson Headgear duo shine again. Given the fact that I did not know in prior weeks that James O'Connor was out with a hamstring injury, I believe. The fact that they've gone on with Lina, who I also didn't know is the son of a former Wallaby and brother of an Italian test player, quite impressive. He's managed the space really well. They use a strong wall cover D, almost Seattle style, where they have a cover, but it's also just a straight up, I'm not going to say a rush, but it's just a wall. That's really all I can say. And it really hampered the Chiefs, obviously affecting the effectiveness of Sean Stevenson and company. And of course, Jamie McKenzie, I can't forget him too. But obviously, for a team that I didn't expect to be okay without JOC, they really have come out to play, especially in the forwards. I think the biggest thing that I saw out of that match is something that I normally don't see. The Chiefs normally, I would argue, have probably the best scrum and set piece play in the comp of Super Rugby. I mean, you can argue the Blues with their lineouts when all healthy, but normally everything else, Chiefs. And they got pushed around, and all without Nella Tupou. I don't know what's going on. Maybe Matt Fessler is feeding him some nice biltong or something. I have no idea, but whatever's going on, keep doing it because they are dominating in the scrum. The Chiefs forward pack has relatively not changed aside of James Ryan and a couple of the other boys leaving. It's mostly within the back line, but damn, they are doing a damn good job taking care of business. And on top of that, holding down Suncorp Stadium. I thought it was a huge thing last year when they beat the Chiefs at home, but to hold it down in their own stadium where the Chiefs normally dominate is something amazing to behold. I do expect them to continue on this path, and I hope that them and the Rebels will be dominating and vying for that second spot. As I hoped. You can check the promos. I have it written down. But, they're going to have to keep translating that over and over again. Excuse the bunnies if you can hear them, by the way. It's more along the lines of just ensuring that what you're doing is exactly how you're going to keep moving forward with. You can't take your foot off the gas. I'm sure Tate McDermott and the rest of the boys know exactly what they're going to be looking for, but it's always just something to look out for. As we all know, the top tend to not really last unless your name is the Crusaders with Razor Robertson, who ironically is also not there. We'll talk about them in a little bit. But I would say that it really exposed a lot of the Chiefs' issues, given how their defense played so well. I think that we're all used to the fact that D-Mac or Sean Stevenson, formerly Amoni Narawa, when he comes back, just being able to just bust out a play, Etenenana Seturo for another one, and just maybe step a couple dudes, take it to the house, or make a magical offload, give it to a guy like Alex Nenkoville or Quinn Tupaia, who I don't know. I'm not going to put this out there into the ether, but has magically poofed his way out of Super Rugby relevance over the last 2 weeks. I think most people would find that strange. Perhaps he's re-injured something in that first game. I don't know. I think that's something also to look forward to. No news has come of that as of yet. But I think it really exposed the fact that they continue to just run alone because they're just expecting to just stay out wide and be ready for that offload pass. And I think when you're facing up a team against like that, they probably didn't bring their whole thing. They may have taken their foot off the gas just a tad. But games are won and lost by margins. And that little tad paid off a lot for the Reds in Queensland. And they have to be able to really run with pods together. You'll see it in my Six Nations discussion for the one game I was able to watch. They really can break open a game. And, man, when you can just secure easy turnover ball, that's pretty much wraps. And obviously, I think my last point's pretty apparent. They're definitely feeling the loss or absence of Emoni Narawa. I haven't exactly looked into what had happened to him. I'm sure he's still copying up that injury from his All Black run. But definitely something to look forward to. Hopefully he comes back along with Cody Taylor after his sabbatical, who also, on a different side note, I'm still waiting for you to come back in fantasy, Cody. George Bell is not it. He's not. Where's your teammates? Not it either. Okay? Crusaders got to fix that. Anyway, on to better things. We obviously have Moana getting, ironically, despite being heavy favorites, getting pretty much dominated for the most part by the Melbourne Rebels. Did I maybe say that the Rebels could get the second seed? I told you. I think the thing with Moana was that I thought was really embarrassing. First off, was that you had the entirety of they're supposed to play in Mount Smart first off. Then they obviously, because of the Warriors game, moved it to FMG Stadium in Waikato, aka the Chiefs Stadium, for that kickoff. And I thought it was pretty embarrassing when they could maybe have 100-ish, and that's really being generous, in that stadium instead of the sold out Mount Smart that the Warriors had, and they play half an hour away. Come on, guys, we can do better than that. The Rebels are a good comp. If you really want to support grassroots, technically speaking, for the Islanders in terms of Moana Pacifica, a lot of former Blues castoffs play on that team. I'm sure Auckland and the Chiefs gang could have pulled up something. I don't know anybody, but nah, whatever it may be, y'all missed out. That match was amazing. For the first half, very clinical for the Melbourne Rebels. I think a lot of ruck watching, and instead of shifting, really led to the larger opening deficit, including Andrew Kellaway's one. The 9, I believe, from that week scored once or twice. He went off on a pick and go pretty early on the 5-meter line. And then on top of that, you have just Moana collapsing mauls, blatant hands in the ruck. It really kept them from moving the ball out of their own territory. So that's why they're constantly having to play defense. And against a Rebels team that's really wanting to send the message to the rest of the league, we'll also talk about that in a little bit later for multiple reasons. You're not going to be in a good spot. And Carter Gordon, when he's on his mark, can really ball. I continue to say that again and again and again. This team can ride or die with how Carter Gordon plays. Now, I know Carter Gordon's an athletic stud. I know he can be probably the best 10 in the Southern Hemisphere if he really tried. Unfortunately, I think he's still having a little bit of the jitters and doing a little bit too much hero ball. He's having a little Sam Darnold 2018-itis. We got to get this thing requantified, because on defense, he's looking like a stud. I've never seen him like this year. I really enjoy it. But if you can only bring that intensity on defense, that's fine. Just don't rush things on offense or off the tee, and you'll be great. That's just two things I think we could really be looking out for. And Carter Gordon would be a king in this league. I don't think Richie Wong ever held the title, but with Bowden Barrett absent and technically D-Mac running a 10 and 15, he has an easy shot. What's the deal? But, we'll see. I definitely think that don't get me wrong. You got, Brad Wilkin, Rob Leota, who was injured twice. He got sent to the blood bin once, came off the second time with, I believe, a hip and an ankle injury. Not looking good on him. I would expect Wilkin to take in and slot in for his spot. But they're dominating on all fronts. What can I say? And if it really was anything of consolation to you Rebels fans, bad angle tackling could have stopped a bunch of the Moana scores. It just so happens that Andrew Kellaway can't guard 3 people. So someone's going to have to go. And if you're not shifting over an extra forward, which they didn't for the bust try and for the inside ball score, you're not going to have a lot of opportunities to really stop them. And when you're talking about the big boys from the islands that Moana has, you're going to be out of luck. Things are going to happen. Yeah, you didn't skunk them, but hey, I consider this a moral victory for a team in Moana Pacifica that I could argue could have been in that quarterfinal spot. They're doing damn good. The Rebels have come back to play, and I can't wait to see what their quote-unquote hellish schedule is going to look like at the end of the season. But obviously, congrats to the bus for the record as a side note. Having 61 tries, especially after being in England and France for so long, is a big milestone. Up the boy. The guy is relatively ageless. He can still play at a very high level, and I think a lot of teams will be thankful for his efforts. Moving on to upset number 3, I think we'd all love to hear Toso Drua Toso, Toso Drua Toso, because the Drua find their rhythm again, and against a flailing Sailors side, come out to play in Suva. That sold-out stadium and that energy, I would argue, is one of, if not the best atmospheres in all of Super Rugby, bar none. I mean, you can get your occasional Eden Park showings or your FMG stadiums, but not like that. Not like that. Maybe Orange Theory, but not like that. The Drua and their Fijian brothers and sisters, they come out to play. Malo, everybody, for showing up, bringing your support to the boys, because let me tell you, that was big work done through the breakdown and off penalties, securing large territory gains by Vravur Taumanda and company. They obviously have the talent. They obviously have the speed. They just got to do the fundamentals. And I think this game was it. I'm not sure if they heard me. I'm probably a minor dude in this landscape, but hey, they came out to ball. And let me tell you, if they can get this thing going, there's no chance where they could go. They obviously can right a lot of the wrongs that their playoff run had. Obviously against the Chiefs and against the Reds, they had a lot of penalties last year. They ended up falling because of that. They're not going to have that now with the way this league is set up this year. You have a shot. The window is open. Take your shot, and let me tell you, we're going to see some magic happen. This is the kind of game that they need to play and continue to build on. Even without Vern Cotter, they still have a couple of the boys in that staff and the old Fijian coaching staff. They know what to do. They just are going to have to play that phone booth fight attitude. Obviously, you want to be that Fijian side that's a little scrappy. Just a little bit. But keep it tempered, because this is the kind of thing that we can expect. If you do your job, obviously things will play out the way they do, and the Drua can continue to clean house. Hopefully, this is a sign for better things to come. I was very disappointed in you for the first 2 weeks, Fiji. I got hope for you now, and I'm really excited to say that because it's been long overdue. And watching your games before were kind of painful. As for the Canes upsetting the Blues, I was really, really on for that. I think that was probably one of my favorite games to watch this weekend, just because of really one thing. I'll give you his name. It starts with Ruben and ends with Love. That guy is easily putting his hands up for MVP. The way he not only doesn't even have to touch the ball, the way he manages the space at 15 is impeccable. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm sure Brett Cameron does a little bit things here and there. I'm sure Cam Roygaard also, who arguably is also putting his hands up for MVP. But, excuse me, if you look at the way Ruben Love plays, when he's on the ball kicking, when he's on the ball with it, ball in hand, when he's calling out for plays, and when he's shifting that ball out wide to a Josh Morby, to a Keenan Aholo, really anybody, it normally leads to scores if you haven't noticed. His ability to attack at the flat at the line, and now especially to pass flat at the line, has set himself apart. I'm telling you, Bowden Barrett, great value, is back, and it's beautiful to see. As much as I wish I had O'Donnell out there, hey, I understand. Maybe Cameron is doing pretty solid at 10. I think he must be if they're undefeated. But Ruben Love is that dude. I mean, he'll ball regardless, and he is setting up a lot of things. Without him, I really don't think the Canes would be where they are today, and it really shows. Obviously, they look sensational with Roygaard back. Obviously, he had a little bit of an injury problem for the first 2 weeks. I really thought TJ Perenara or Richard Judd would really take over that role, but hey, no qualms with Richard Judd, no qualms with TJ. Can't Roygaard that boy. He that boy. And let me tell you, development of the Hurricane side, which I thought was normally not on the better end over the last couple of years, has shown out. Honestly, Braden Eose is one of the few that I haven't seen really step off the gas I mean, so he has a little bit, but not too much. I think the immediate development of Peter Lakai and Keenan Aholo is really showing up. Keenan Aholo beat like 7 defenders on that one score to set up Higgins on that try. And then you obviously have Peter Lakai obviously on the ball. Beast. Off the ball. Getting turnover. Amazing. I'm very happy for the Canes. And I think that they're going to keep dominating on the New Zealand side. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they end up taking the number 1 seed over the Chiefs with the way the Chiefs are looking. You know, they have a lot of things to clean up, and the Canes don't. So it'll be an interesting matchup to see them go down to Wellington, especially. And, you know, obviously, you know, a little chippiness at FMG, but, you know, it's not as good of a game as I would like to say this one is. I still say this one was probably, you could argue against with the Canes, but pretty much second for the whole weekend. I would say it would be the Taz game, man. It was an interesting set of play. You know, the Taz just need to continue just playing this box style of just obviously crushing it on defense. Shooters along the road, just down, taking out attack before it happens, putting pressure on the opposing 10 and 12 before they can make a play. The box kicking, insane. Ted Edmed, boom. Max Jorgensen, I am so happy for you. This is the first time since last year you guys have balled like that with Jorgensen. And, you know, let me tell you, just let the boy free. Set him free. Because he can run with that ball. And there could have been a couple more scores for him if he really, really wanted to off those 2 penalties. But it's just nice to see him with confidence taking the ball into test line. You know, the Highlanders have a relatively good defense with Billy Harmon and the boys. You know, Reese Patchell is not really at fault. You know, I think he played a really good game. His management of the space was exceptional. His try was exceptional as well. But I think when you look at the Taz defense on that one for Patchell's try, you really can't fault anyone. It really was just the shooter. He really missed the opening gap instead of covering that blocker line, and Patchell just obviously went through. And, you know, what can you do? Things happen. It's fundamentals. Yes, we can work on it, but as a player, it's just something to look for. Just to do better. Obviously, I think they understandably need to be less frantic in order to win, which is obviously, you know, everyone's talking about the last 5 to 10 minutes of that game, and that game was huge in that regard. But, you know, I think if you look at it at points, especially in those final moments that gave Patchell the lineup points, you know, from the jumping over the ruck and knocking the ball on to not releasing at the ruck, you know, you have a litany of other things where you literally could have just held your line and they wouldn't have gotten the points. Could they have started the drop goal and probably won the game still? Yeah. But you had the opportunity. Should Tane Edmed be the decider of your game? Now, I understand he is paid to do these things, to manage the space, to be the quarterback, basically, and to hold it down when things go wrong. But he's a young kid. I think most people need to understand that as a young player, he's still developing. I would argue he hasn't hit his prime yet. So you need to kind of, I'm not saying baby him, but understandably so, allow him to be a catalyst to your success, not the reason why, but a supplement to why you win. You have the formula down. They just can't screw it up. Now, obviously, there's the whole Darren Coleman getting fired thing. I'm pretty sure with this effort, unless they get blown out in round 4, the Taz would be stupid to fire him. But, you know, it's a developing young team. And I think when you're looking at a rebuild over the last 2 years, they're in the right direction. They're going where they need to be. The Highlanders are obviously, they still have the talent advantage over the Taz. So I think you need to look at that. You know, honestly, Ratuvuki Neepkins is still that dude. You know, Patchell is looking like a beast as a young 10 developing in New Zealand. I think they were probably in the middle of the pack, just like the Waratahs in their respective island conferences. But it's just bound to happen a couple times. You just got to let it go and move on. The margins could have been a lot worse. As for the MLR, I was able to catch 5 games this weekend of the 6. Of those 5 games, I was relatively disappointed with all of them. I think we'll discuss my in-person experience with LA next, but I think the biggest one to look at is Anthem versus NOLA. Now, I will preface this. I did not realize that Anthem could crumble this bad against a NOLA team. You know, I think a NOLA looked like a college team working on that high school side that like you normally would see. Or like, for example, everyone I think remembers from all my American fans or sports meme fans out there. Y'all know who I'm talking about. Bishop Sycamore. That looked like a Bishop Sycamore game. It was so bad. I couldn't bear to hold my eyes to the screen for a little bit. It was just a bloodbath, between Dougie Fife and the boys, or you had the defense just absolutely just running through them with the scrums and the mauls. Jesus, it was bad. But, outside of basic hands on the line, Anthem looked outmatched for 90% of that match until like the last 10 or 15 minutes. I really love the space management by NOLA, especially in the grub and chip game. It really helped move the ball. Obviously, with the Anthem being a young team, they're going to try to shoot up and cut off space, and they took advantage very easily. I think this just goes to show how much experience as a first-year inaugural club that NOLA has with their development system, and not only that, with their coaching staff, to really just take out a relatively unprepared and inexperienced Anthem team. The Maul could be the saving grace of this team. I will say forwards outside of Jared were really not there. Obviously, I don't know what's wrong with Jared. Perhaps he's not in the team or injured. Obviously, there's not a lot of news sites covering the MLR, unfortunately. So, we don't get a lot of news and injury reports like that. And on top of that, they're not that great at putting out news themselves. But that's besides the point. That physicality has really come into play. They've always had that back magic. They've always had, obviously Jared making plays too. But when you have that 4-pack playing the way they do, like a Houston, you can ball no matter how bad your offense is. And this offense is good. So I'm truly expecting NOLA to really be in that mix. Preview, by the way, of the Eastern Conference Final. So knock on wood, and let's hope for the best for them. As for LA, I was able to go in person and an experience with a couple of my rugby kids to really just have them learn about the 15s game and really explore it. And for me, really, I think to not only see my homies on Houston, but also to see the fan experience that this LA team, ATL, has to offer. And I personally was very disappointed. I understand that a lot of MLR teams are low in budget. A lot of them play out of baseball stadiums, soccer fields, etc. But I can name you 6 other teams that I've been to that their fan experience and fans in and of themselves were not an away game. And it was a great experience at all of these venues. Stadium was quiet. No one was chatting. Obviously, they just came into town. I understand that. Maybe they're developing. But to the point where your whole, I'm not going to say whole fan base, but the majority of the tone around the Houston area was that you're not from LA and you're calling yourself LA, all while being LA Rugby Club, not LA Rugby Club, but rugby clubs around LA being there is not a good look for you. You had guys from Pasadena, you had guys from Eagle Rock, you had guys from Santa Monica, my old team. I'm not going to say names. You had guys from Belmont. But I heard some of the conversations and they were not very appealing. On top of that, food and merch. Come on, guys. $9 for gummies. $9. $20 for a slice of pizza. It's not a good look, guys. I could see if we were playing at Dignity Health, but we're not. I was horribly disappointed. Lucky thing, I heard the drums because I was waiting outside the Dignity Health gate for a while, and I was like, where's the game? Why are the gates not open? But I guess not. They play at a soccer field now, and I was not expecting that. Maybe it's because it didn't look good on national broadcast to have an empty stadium, which is true in LA Sevens after that whole debacle, but to move to a soccer stadium, not a good play. Also, grass there, will tell you, notoriously bad. But outside of that, I think it's just going to be an away game. Like I said, I think they're going to have the Chargers curse, I guess. You're not the LA Galaxy. You're not the Chargers, who are at least from the California area. A little disappointed. But I do think there are some highlights that I need to discuss for that team. Jason Emery, Dan Hollinshead, and Andrew Coe really showing them quality in moments. Obviously a lot of their tries got brought back because of offsides, knock-ons, hands in the ruck, what have you. But They really showed their promise. They're really bringing that New York culture in, and I really love to see it. Their ability to attack all areas of the field and set up other players to be successful in open moments is great. It's much needed for an ATL team that lost a lot of their playmakers, and they are them. Obviously, sloppy tackling and effort kept this game a lot tighter than it needed to be. From both sides. Houston on that opening score. What are you doing, 9? Get in there and throw a shoulder. Drag him into touch. I know you're small. You guys can get lower. He was not that big. Do something. Come on. We got hope. You guys are pros, I think. Kind of. I don't know if we can consider ATL a pro team anymore. They don't look that good. But anyway, besides my biases, it really should have been a blowout by Houston. It doesn't matter how much miracle plays you make. I've talked about it earlier. But if they're wrong, it doesn't matter how much you do. You could do 50. If they're all wrong, you can't count them. And majority of those beautiful tries like that kick across the field from to Andrew Coe from Jason Emery and Dan Hollinshead, or that banger of a tap and go that they took halfway across the field, didn't count. Was it nice to see? Of course. Was I expecting it to translate? Absolutely not. I think for me, the biggest takeaway was how rattled Houston was. I was sitting in the area around Pote Human. Got a chance to really get to know him, talk to him a little bit. Really cool guy. Love the way and effort and energy that he brings to the table in terms of rugby in the U.S. and obviously for coaches just to help them with the game. I think we were all surprised on how bad Houston looked rattled on offense versus LA's rush blitz style defense. Obviously, sorry. Hey, stop it. Really, when you look at the blitz defense, obviously it's going to leave a lot of room in the back end, and they didn't capitalize on that at all. They kept trying to pass it, which obviously led to a Andrew Coe almost score. We're not going to talk about that either, but if you keep just throwing hands on the line instead of grubbing, I think Davey Kutza wasn't really expecting that. You could tell that the LA team was really counting on that, ATL. But, Davey is that dude. And, Davey's going to find a way to really make himself succeed. And I think he did that day, because after the second half, I'm not sure if Pote yelled at everyone. Drew Wild looked a little hampered down by a little ankle injury. But they came out to play. Davey, Andrew linked up on a magical play. I think arguably, he deserved more than, player of the week, which is what he got from MLR stats. Shout out to you for actually putting out the right stats for all the games. Notorious for killing it because the MLR just can't seem to do it this year. But, Davey is him. That guy should have been the MVP last year. I mean, obviously his team didn't go that far in the playoffs or really hit the playoffs at all, but he's a baller. Come on. Davey is him. Let that boy cook. But really, I think they really just need to work on limiting that knockoff off a set piece. They had a lot of plays off of lineouts and off of scrums that just didn't line up the way they wanted it. LA brought a lot more than what I was expecting to the scrum. Obviously, Houston will still dominate most of the time, but enough to really just stop the offensive dominance that normally Houston brings to the table in terms of physicality, just from getting back on top. Obviously the lack of effort, especially in the tap and goes, really is what LA capitalized on. They got really deep on a lot of these plays and, obviously set Houston back. Houston easily, I think, if in a perfect world, if everything had gone their way, could have probably put this game within 20, 30 points if they really wanted to. They had a lot of opportunities and they didn't take it. And I think against an LA team, you should, because against other teams like Seattle, against obviously New England, definitely against that resurgent Utah team that seems to be on the come up again, you're not going to have those windows, or at least those windows will be a lot smaller. And with the losses that they've incurred on the back line, especially in the forward pack, it'll be interesting to see how they translate that against those teams. I think Houston has a very easy road open early. I think they really need to capitalize on these wins, get a lot of bonus points as much as they can before the hard run hits in the middle and early beginning of the end for the season. And that's going to be something to look out for all you SaberCat fans. As for Chicago, I was truly expecting my Hounds to walk into Zion's bank and say, hold that L again and continue to hold it. And unfortunately, somehow Utah manages to pull something out because their development is insane. I don't get it. The biggest storyline into this game was the fact that of the two wingers that they started for the week, only one MLR cap between both of them. And they both balled. I don't even know who their names were. I probably should have looked it up for this pod, but I felt that having it non-scripted made it a little bit more genuine into how I was reacting, because these guys look like Joe Mono and Caleb Mockney had a baby, and it was crazy. Between the amount of pace that they had, between the power and the step, the elusiveness was out of this world. I was in love with it. Great, just men amongst boys again. And obviously, it led to Utah getting the dub. Chicago, I think, semi-lost in defense versus the power that obviously Utah brings, but especially with the flat pace. I'm not sure if it's because of Joel Hodgson, maybe, heard through the grapevine that I was kind of dissing him about how he was dealing with his stuff, given the fact that they brought back their old 10 from Houston. But my boy put on a show, because Houston took a massive L letting their 10 go to Utah, and somehow he held the reins back, and not only that, carved up the entire Chicago Hound backline and backfield with magical kicks for space, great kicks for touch, great off the tee. What can I say? The man did a masterclass. I can't complain. Obviously, he didn't really do a lot in the scoring effort, but and tries at least. But in terms of just overall 10 play, I can't really knock the guy for it. He did exceptional, and hats off to him. Between that and setting up many of the plays, I really think Hodgson also should be in that line for that Player of the Week MVP discussion. I think a lot of people are overlooking his efforts. Utah really missed the playoffs last year. Some people would argue undeservedly so, but their play this year, despite their losses, has been immense. And I love to see what they have brought to the table. Chicago looks a little lost this year. I'm not going to lie. My Hounds they're just not translating. They're not barking. They just running away and yelping. So got to take that L where I got to be. Utah, I think you're a great franchise. You have a beautiful stadium and especially great development. So hats off to you for that W. I think they're going to need, you just basically showed the Hounds how not to do goal line D. You maybe have fixed their set piece, Chicago, but you got to fix that, because any other team will just take it to you over and over and over again, and they won't care. Houston has a little bit of class. Utah has class, but other teams like a Seattle, like a New York, like a NOLA, they're just going to keep pounding it, and you're not going to have anywhere to stop it. So food for thought, people. Come on. I know my boys up there can play. We just got to do better. As for Old Glory and New England, I would like to say this is probably, I probably would say, my second most entertaining match of the MLR that weekend, outside of the LA game, obviously. A true phone booth fight between finesse with New England and power with Old Glory. Old Glory looked back to what their roots were with all the things in the Cinderella story that they did last year with Kurt Baker and friends. But hey, Reese McDonald continues to have his pace to be MVP of the league. He continues to be all around the ball, turnovers, off the ball, taking picks, scoring tries, setting up tries. My man's a genius. What can I say? I made a ton of highlights for this dude last year, and I think anything this year, if I had access to it again, would go viral. This guy is it. I mean, he's a freak. Him and Jason Patros are a dangerous combo to have in that backfield. I love to see Ben Lesage back at his back on his thing, doing it what he does best. I think Ben Lesage was criminally underused where he was at previously. To see him get back to that LA Giltini lifestyle of just scoring tries and setting up things and sending massive hits to the opponent is a beautiful thing to see. You could argue that this was maybe the Eastern Conference final rematch preview, but I think NOLA will make of that what they will. I think NOLA is a better team than Old Glory at the moment. But if this is an indictment of things to come, I'm very happy for the Old Glory DC team. Obviously, Jason Robinson rides off like a boss, scoring that try. I think he's going to be the hero in DC for a little bit. Hopefully they carry this role through, because the first couple of weeks, again, like the Drua, very painful to watch. As for the One Six Nations game, I was able to watch. It was probably my favorite team and probably one of their better matchups of the year, that they ended up basically handing the game to in Marcus Smith in England. Shout out Ireland. They fumbled the bag hard on this. I really think that when you looked at the team playing for the first 60 minutes, they looked like the team that played the part, but penalties hurt them late, and they took their foot off the gas. I keep telling people this every time. Take your foot off the gas, you're going to lose. You're just going to lose. If you're not going to have the physical talent on the offensive side and physicality on the defense side off the bench, at least bring energy, anything. Outside of James Lowe, that team was silent after the 60th minute. Come on now. But I really do see the development of Marcus Smith off the bench with this. Obviously from George Ford, space management and his calm really helped seal this. I really think that a younger Marcus Smith probably couldn't do that. And to all the people that obviously say Marcus Smith is a hack, that he's washed, that he's not good for England at all, I think you guys really need to check what you guys do, because when you look at the tape, he's a stud. He is not just a guy that attacks at the line and throws miracle balls. He's actually pretty good, and he's only going to get better under probably one of the best game managers in the world in George Ford. Yeah, he may not be an Alex Smith when it comes to throwing a ball, but game management and getting his team into the position to win, he's that dude. And what better way to learn than from him? So come on, guys, do better. I also love to see what we like to call the inverted jack brought into Test rugby. Now, I don't really necessarily see this a lot outside of some very creative provincial things and teams now, and also in kind of grassroots. But I think this can be used very well if you're done right. For all those who don't know what an inverted jack is, or know it by a different term, for the visual companion, it is essentially your two players, your A, B, and C. Oh, why is there balloons? Flat on the line, and your A man is slotted in behind as a boss or a back out the back to really swing that ball wide if need be, or take a support line. And England kept running it down their throat with that, and their pod selection was impeccable. Ireland didn't seem to know where the ball was going, and I think that's a great way to put it. Alex Mitchell is one of those dudes who can just take a pick and go to the house, and they really capitalize on that as well, because of the fact you have multiple options in the back. Now you don't know, and especially that's not even counting the backs in behind that pod. So you're giving them an embarrassment of riches on defense, and the defense is just getting hungry. And obviously a very hungry, dominant team early is going to make mistakes like that, and it's going to happen. And Ireland needs to learn how to fix it. Andy Farrell is that dude. I think he knows what he's doing. I'm sure they'll fix this. Nobody shifting over at the goal line, I think, really, with most of them really kind of stacked on Ollie Chesham, kind of sealed that route and really allowed the dominoes to fall. They were really cheeky, England, in terms of moves by Toje and Will Stewart to really seal the penalties on Tog Byrne and friends for Ireland to get into that position, to be in that area, to be for a drop goal. I mean, hats off to England. I really did not expect this, but when you look at it over the tape, you see two different teams, and I think Ireland was just looking for that grand slam and really getting excited for that. And obviously England, realized it, and Borthwick came to play. That blitz defense, and on top of that attack with that inverted jack formation, is going to be, I think, something that needs to be proliferated into the Test game. I think it'll open up a lot of teams talent-wise in terms of what you can bring to the table offensively and how you can hide your plays. And that's just a great way to start your Test showing, and also to slowly wind down the end of Six Nations. It's been a great comp this year, and I still hope Ireland obviously will win, but for all I know, they could lose the next two. I don't know, but let's move on. We had my one NRL match this weekend that I could stand of the rest of round one, the Warriors versus the Sharks. for all those who haven't watched the league, my Waz did not do good against Canula, but I think they messed up a couple things on that. I would like to say one thing. Luke Metcalf is him. Going into this game, I knew a little bit about him. Obviously, for all those who know me personally, I have only played League during last summer. So I really was just really getting into it. But that guy can ball. I think that step where he took half the defense with him, like Etienne Nana Seturo, is something. He's always around the ball as a 9, and he's willing to take a pick and go and a tap. I think that fearlessness is what a lot of 9s should have in this modern game. I think we all see it in Canberra guard, kind of in Falal Fakatava. Alex Mitchell is another. You need to see that more in your modern 9, and I think that's a great way to see it, even if it's for League. What I think was the biggest thing that really hurt the game is how they didn't get him for a penalty try or a card. I really think that was a professional foul done on the final kick by Sean Johnson to the corner. Picked up the player in the air, threw him out of bounds. I know you had to do that to stop the try because that was basically guaranteed because their wing, their number 2, that boy can finish. And you could argue, yeah, he did get into touch, but could he have gotten it in? Probably. Now, the ref couldn't believe it. I don't know what he's smoking on. I think he's missing the fact that all of last year, that guy was making tries of the year for the whole team to see. Come on, give it a penalty try. That honestly could have helped with the game and probably kept the Waz on top. But such is life, I guess. I think another thing I was really sad about was RTS looking middling, and I think not the speedy stepper that I've been watching for the last 2 years. Perhaps it's a lot of just his union positioning because I know they're lining him up as really like a center, but perhaps he's still kind of stuck in his ways. And also he looks very unenthusiastic on defense. He's taking bad lines on tackles. He's looking for the hit rather than hit marking the man outside. That really is setting up a lot of things that Canula really ripped into. I think everyone really wanted to attack him given the fact that it was his debut back, his return triumphantly back to League from the Blues when that experiment did not go according to plan. But yeah, do better than that, RTS. I know you can do it. We have to have hope. But outside of that, I think the Waz they couldn't stack it up. They had too much things against them. Moving late, I really think that they need to get off their high horse and get back to work because none of these teams are going to be looking for you. It's all going to be a target on your back. You were the Cinderella favorite last year. You got a sold-out Mount Smart Stadium and you lost. That's bad luck against a middling team. Come on, do better. Let's get into the news for this week. Really packed set of news. I think you're going to be kind of surprised about this. Some people may have known Stacey Fluler, also known as Stacey Walker, from the All Blacks and Black Ferns Sevens. Arguably, I think one of the best signings for PR Sevens that they had outside of Ruby Tui in the last year. She's been joining League, and she's going to the Brisbane Broncos women's team. I was kind of floored by it. I know a lot of my former teammates were. I still think this is probably the biggest signing of the year and a huge miss by the NZR to really lock down one of their best and most promising players back in the fold. I think she will be a plug and play 5 or 7 in this league with her pace and space management. I think it was strange that she didn't join them for LA Sevens or for Vancouver, at least for that little bit. But I'm sure Brisbane paid her a hefty sum for her to basically just say, I'm good and don't want to show up because I'm sure the NRL has a little secret bag. I know they got the bag, but I know they got an even bigger secret bring struck somewhere, hiding that in the brush for especially moments like these. It makes sense for the NRL to pay her not to play and hopefully not get her hurt. Obviously, when I was at LA Sevens, Portia Women got a little bit knocked around. I know she's a tough cookie. She's basically a tank, but that kind of things can do your mileage, especially when you're getting top dollar from a league team, especially Brisbane, like a brand like that to go play. I'm sure they want you off the pitch, and understandably so. That'll make me a little sad. I couldn't see her playing live. Yeah, but oh well, such is life. As for keeping it in the U.S. area, the Jaguars are planning to return to Super Rugby, supposedly. I don't know how to feel about this. Didn't you move to the URC because of time zone differences? and similar play styles and moving with South Africa? Like, what is going on? Now we're having an All Blacks tour come to South Africa. The South Africans are thinking about returning to Super Rugby. Is it just media rights deals? Is it too much input from Jay-Z? Is it like, what is it? Like, you guys are troubling me. The Sharks are on a downturn despite getting John Plumtree back. The Stormers are looking meh. What? Why? On top of that, just a little secret sauce on that, because we're talking about South Africa. They're thinking about leaving Sio Kolisi out of captaincy for South Africa because he's not locally based. Not a good look, but I understand it. Perhaps this is why they need to come back to South Africa and just, play back in Super Rugby. I think it'd be a great thing to see. The Jaguars could be the opening shot. They're looking at in earliest a 2025 return. Like I said earlier, I don't think it makes no sense just because of time differences and the amount of flights and travel plans that they had to pay. It's only one team. At that rate, you might as well bring the Cheetahs back and the Griquas. But I don't think they're going to do that because I don't think they can afford to do this. Maybe it's the URC's lack of revenue. I still think that it makes more money than Super Rugby. I don't know. I'm not in that world for URC. I'm sure Jay-Z pumps a lot of money. I would understand even Bunnings and DHL does do the same for Super Rugby, but perhaps not as much. I know Super Rugby would give them better publicity, I would argue, because it's a lot more accessible to watch than the URC. But and also playing in that French European time zone kind of blows, in my personal opinion, when it comes to a US watcher watching them play. And that's basically where 90% of their market is because they're playing Argentina. Maybe that's the issue. I don't know. But perhaps they're looking at playing a little bit more open, given the fact that the URC is mostly just a premiership with a little bit better power and speed on the wing. For Southern sides, given the fact that they've lost to them in the World Cup, that wouldn't surprise me. I think that'd be a easy plug-in. I think they just need to find out an efficient way to get funds to do all the things that they want to do in Super Rugby. Having them back obviously makes Super Rugby a lot better. Obviously, I would love to see them against the Japanese sides. I think that'd be cool. But here's again, crossing our fingers and just watching the balls fly where they go. I think the really major thing that I think I need to spend a lot of time on with you guys and to close up this pod is the Rebels. I know I talked about them early, but I also mentioned that they had a bombshell to do. And they're making statements on multiple fronts, and this is how it starts. They're going to take it to Rugby Australia in federal court, and they're probably going to win. Unless I see anything for grounds that would say otherwise. I think they're overall overarching favorites to win this case. They have cited misconduct and refusal to allow commitments by Rugby Australia following a debt deficit of over 20 million allegedly. Now, they do allege that with a 60-day stay of execution from their voluntary administration agent as they scrambled to find options, they were managing to come up with the fact that they only ascertained that allegedly their primary debt is only 11 million, 6.5 to their fans and preceding donors, basically their members, and another 5 million to debtors and miscellaneous operations like paying players, paying staff, blah, 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 blah. So where's that other 9 million coming from? 10 million plus? I don't know. And this is all in legal paperwork already handed to Parliament in Australia. So I think this will be interesting to see. They've also demonstrated a responsibility to make installment payments that they've already done over the last summer and year, really. They ascertained that their only asset is their license to play in Super Rugby, which is probably true. I really don't think they have a lot of equity outside of Super Rugby season. Melbourne is relatively a league and AFL side. I've basically said that a million times. And the Melbourne Rebels are not the team to talk about in town. So that makes sense. And on top of that, they cite mishandling of media rights money between all 5 rugby teams, citing preferential treatment specifically to the Brumbies and to the Reds. They also cite mistreatment to their club over the Taws, who had the same issue and continue to have the same issue, but it's not as public and on top of things in terms of the media as the Rebels' plight is. I would argue, actually, looking at now with the Waratahs' debt that it could be arguably worse, given that they don't have as much star players as I think the Waratahs do in terms of personal talent and what they could garner on the open market. I think, and another thing that I thought was interesting was that Rugby Australia would only give the funds that they needed in relief, despite all the clubs in Australia be, struggling. I think realistically, outside of maybe the Reds, they only would do it if the Rebels sold to a private equity firm with at least $150 to $250 million price tag. That's a little concerning. You can't withhold funds because of that, just because. And they also cite, obviously, other miscellaneous things that Rugby Australia has said in writing. Supposedly they got receipts, and I would love to see them. Let them go into deposition in court. Let them ball out. I think ownership has a real good stake in this. I think digging into the books of this franchise has really exposed a lot of things, that a lot of people have been talking about, theorizing really, that never really had a chance to confirm, from corruption in Australian rugby, preferential treatment, obviously mismanagement of funds. I think the hours of it, they have a sufficient enough case to maybe knock on embezzlement. We'll see. But I really think that the Rebels can win this case. And not only that, walk out of the case helping all of Australian rugby in this case with financial backing. With every team struggling in Australia, the product on the field has been lackluster the last couple of years. Outside of the Taz, I really enjoy having Australians be back to where they need to be. I think they're one of the few cornerstones of rugby that make it fun for a young fan to watch. And I think this money could be generational in terms of where they could go with this settlement from the Australian government. So let's see. Everyone go support the Rebels. If you don't believe me, you can go look it up. It's widely published. I can't set links in here, but obviously I think people are smart. They know what Dr. Google is. I'm sure you can figure it out. But that's probably the longest episode I've done, I think, on this show. And I think that's going to be it for me this week, guys. Look forward to the matches this weekend. Obviously, round 5 of Six Nations is going to be fun. And I'll see you next week. Peace.